Hello, and welcome to the Thyroid Warrior podcast. I'm Ebony, and I'm here as your wellness facilitator. I'm going to be sharing my experiences in managing Hashimoto's disease. I really hope that it'll help you on your personal journey. Keep in mind, however, this does not substitute for medical advice. It is only for your information and motivational purposes only. Now, let's get started. Thank you so much for being on the show, Carmen. I'm very excited about it. I love everything that you have been doing, all the things that you have to offer, and just thank you for agreeing to be on the show today.
Oh, thank you so much for having me. I always love chatting with you, so this should be fun.
I know. I'm so excited about it. So, we're living in this weird time with the pandemic, and I have watched you just give a lot of really great information about fitness and nutrition and making sure that you're really and truly taking care of yourself. And that's something that in the last couple of episodes, I've been giving my audience tips on how to just be in this space and really take care of themselves. So you were one of the first people that popped into my head. I knew I was going to ask you, but once we started talking about all of our going lives and all this stuff, I was like, oh, that would be perfect. Let's see if she wants to do it. So super excited to have you. And I just want to dive right in and just ask you, how are you doing? How are you managing from just a nutrition perspective, a self-care perspective, and just juggling all the things?
So I would say the first few weeks, like anyone else, I found myself watching the news, trying to figure out what was going on. And I kind of had this thought in my head that things were hard because things were different, because we had these limitations. And so I'm really good about reframing my thoughts and thinking positive thoughts. And so I thought I was doing that, but I really had to take a step back and realize that for me, where I'm at, I do work from home. And so things are not really that much different. Mm-hmm. And so I really wanted to shift my mindset from things are hard, things are different, there's so many challenges, I'm so uncertain, to what is this making possible? Mm-hmm. So I think that was the big shift for me. The other big shift was, most of my business is built on in-person workshops and events, my own events, and then speaking at other events. Yeah. And so I kind of went into my old coping mechanism of being busy. And so I had to stop and recognize that too and think about what is this making possible. So I stepped back and was able to show up, like what you said, and start serving. So I was like, okay, I'm being asked to serve right now in a way that's different. It's not in person with people, but so I created a group of women together that could actually connect together, and we do that via Zoom every other week, and that also fills my cup, going back to your question on how I am personally doing. And then this has just given me the time and space to slow down and be really creative, tapping into my feminine energy. And then as far as my nutrition goes, I'd like to think that I kind of have a really good handle on that. Mm-hmm. I've been living with an autoimmune condition, MS, since I was about 25, and I'm 39 now. And it's been, lots of practice and lots of trying different things, but how I eat really hasn't changed. The only thing that's changed for me is how I'm buying things. Mm-hmm. So in particular, vegetables, because vegetables, while I do eat meat, I'm not like vegan or vegetarian. My diet mainly consists of vegetables. And so I have been buying a lot more like organic frozen vegetables to make sure I have those on hand, which if people don't know, I think they think fresh vegetables and produce is best, but really it's only best when they're in season and they're in abundance, because then the nutritional value is high, right? Yeah. And so when they're not in season, go to the freezer section, because those are picked ripe and then flash frozen versus picked unripe and then ripened on the way to the store, and they lose some of the nutritional value. And so I've really been stocking my freezer with that. And I think that that's been a really big help for me because I personally choose to not eat dairy, soy, gluten, or refined white sugar. That's what works for me because my focus is always feeling good every day. And so I think the biggest thing for me was the mindset shift from this is hard, this is challenging, this is different to what is this making possible and stepping into that creative capacity. And then just making sure that I do have some staples in the freezer that I can go to still make the meals that I like and enjoy and that make me feel good on a daily basis.
Hmm. All of that, just all the things that just made me so happy. Because I feel that that's so important. And especially managing an autoimmune disease, like, people look at you and they look at me and they're like, well, what do you mean you have an no, you don't. Like, stop it. And a lot of what I've heard about when I was watching the news was, folks with that are immune compromised, or, you have to be very careful and you have to do all those things. And I felt this great sense of anxiety surrounding that. And that's when I knew, okay, I need to turn the news off. I need to make sure I'm tuning in and dialing in. And you mentioned that for you, like sometimes your default is to be busy. And I tend to go that way too. But I also had to recognize, no, you need to slow down, figure out, okay, how do I take care of myself in this time of uncertainty when you're hearing all of these things swirl? How do you make sure that you're doing a lot of the things that you already mentioned? And something that I thought was really cool that I saw you and your husband doing was the sound bath. Could you share with us more things like that in terms of what you've been doing for self-care and how you've been working as a couple and a family just to make sure that, for lack of a better terms, you guys aren't ready to attack each other since we are really homebound?
Yes, yes. And one more point on something that you said is that with my autoimmune condition, I did take immunosuppressant drugs for only 1 year. So I took a drug called Rebif that is an interferon. But I no longer take that. And so I don't actually, even though I have a diagnosis of MS, I don't actually feel or think that my immune system is compromised because I'm not taking those medications. And everybody's autoimmune condition is different, and their choice to take medication or not is different and a personal choice to them. But I actually think that I am healthier than most people just because what I do on a daily basis. And so I just want to throw that out there because if you do have some sort of medical condition, but you're not taking those drugs that suppress your immune system, you could actually be really healthy. And I just want to give that to people as another sense of like security, that just because you do quote unquote have a diagnosis doesn't make you have a compromised immune system. So I just want to put that out there. But yes, okay. One of the things we recognized right away was that either people are going to be making a lot of babies or getting a lot of divorces, right? Like, yep. Which road are you going to go down? Because people are working from home, people are forced to be together. And so that's really going to bring up some shit if like you haven't worked through it. And so with me, my career is really about empowering women, and my husband is a massage therapist. And so it's really about serving others, what we both do. So we thought, why don't we do this fun 14-day challenge for couples specifically, but anybody can join, just to bring them together, like ask each other better questions, not just talk about the weather and the coronavirus every day, talk about dreaming, like we were talking about, use this time to really slow down. And so we thought, okay, what are some of the things that he and I do normally in our everyday lives that are helpful? And one of them is meditation and a sound bath. So he and I both have 8 pretty strong morning rituals that we do. He does his, I do mine. But he got this bowl, and started playing the sound bath. I want to say like 4 years ago, one of the massage conferences that we had went to. And it is just so amazing. So sound is really something that can really get you grounded, and anything that gets you to like slow down, get out of your head and back into your body is what that's all about. So we started offering the sound bath and people just really loved it. We would invite them to lay down, get blankets and pillows and invite them to do it together as a couple because that's something that they hadn't experienced before. And we got such great feedback from that. We also invited them to like dream, get out a piece of paper. And this is something that couples can do and just write on the top, like, wouldn't it be cool if, and then think about like the next year or whatever time frame you want to do, 6 months, 1 year, 5 years. But wouldn't it be cool if, and don't have any limitations. So no money, no financial, no family obligations, but just start dreaming really big and do it individually and then come together and talk about that. Because I think all too often couples don't dream. They might set goals, but you know what? Like oftentimes it's a goal that that you're already going to reach. And where's the fun in that? Like a goal should be like huge, like they say, like a big, hairy, audacious goal. So you get excited about it and you can really work towards it. So something that my husband and I were talking about as an example was like, we'd like to wake up more days than not out of the year near the ocean. And right now we live in Colorado. And so it's like, okay, well, what does that mean? We don't know exactly what that means. We don't have a plan, but we're ready to explore it. And when you're open and you put that out into the universe, so I had an amazing woman just DM me on Instagram, and I hadn't really met her before. And I asked where she lived, and she was telling about she lives in San Diego, and that her parents used to live in Colorado where I live. And I told her the dream, and she goes, oh my gosh, you have to check out Oceanside, California, because it gets a bad rap, but they're really doing things to build things up, and you should check it out. I think that you'll really like it. So we just like add that to the list. But if you don't talk about those things, like you never know, and you're just like holding them inside, and you're never going to be able to experience. So something like that is really good. The other thing that we shared that was really good was just asking each other better questions. Instead of just talking about the weather or the coronavirus, just digging a little bit deeper. Like, even if it is like right now, what is like your favorite childhood memory that you can remember? Like, that's kind of random. Or like maybe asking, if you could do anything in the world and, like money wasn't an issue, like what would you do? Or where's the first place you'd want to travel to if we could go anywhere, money wasn't an issue, time wasn't an issue, responsibility, just like getting outside of the box to get to know each other on a different level in a more positive way to break through that anxiety and that uncertainty. And maybe that resentment that you might be building up with your partner, because resentment we can get into that too, but that's a pretty big thing that's happening right now.
Yeah, for sure. And I really do love how you kind of opened that up. And one of the things that I have actually started doing was, well, first of all, I am kind of sad because TJ Maxx and Marshalls are closed, and that's where I always get all my really pretty journals from. So I'm just like, crap. But what I have started doing is just writing down like my wildest dreams and thoughts. And it's really interesting too. Like I have dry erase markers and I write my affirmations on my mirror so I can see them every day. And what was crazy is sometimes I take a picture of them and I favorite them and I go back and I'm like, wait a minute, I wanted to do this. I said I was going to do that. And it happened. So I just love how you spoke about that because that is so important. And one of my daily affirmations is I am strong, I am healthy, and I'm better than I've ever been before. And to your point as well, like I feel like today at 32, I feel better than what I did when I was 16 because of all of the healthy choices and decisions that I have been making. And sometimes I'm like, dang, I kind of wish I could go back to college and like race my 21-year-old self. And how cool would that be? So I think that's just amazing as to how you kind of did that with him and how you set up that kind of time and space for all of that. And speaking of resentment, What advice can you give to folks that are currently struggling right now with either that or that guilt of saying like, oh, I see all these people out here and they're super productive, but all I want to do is just like sit here and not do anything?
Yeah, well, let's talk about resentment a little bit. Um, and it's not always sunshine and rainbows in my household, but I think the thing that we do is that we're self-aware enough to when something might be bothering the other person. So the number one thing that you can do to not have as much resentment is to not hold expectations. So when we hold expectations and we expect our partner, our other person, our friend, our family member, anyone to be a mind reader and know what we're thinking without clearly communicating what we need, and then it doesn't happen, well, you know what happens? You feel let down. They should have known. Well, how do they know if you're not communicating? So if you can just, I like to say, hold space. And this can go for any relationship, but specifically for your significant other too. Hold space for them without judgment. Because oftentimes we go into a situation and we're already reading their nonverbal cues. And so we think, oh, this is going to happen. But if you let go of that judgment and let go of that expectation, you can really be in the moment and you can hear them and listen to them. And sometimes they just want to be listened to. So the other day, Joel had told me something. He watches the news still, and I don't really watch the news. And so oftentimes he'll report back things. And I just had this feeling like he was going to report something negative. And I don't want to hear that right now. So I was holding that expectation in my head. And he goes, oh, my friend I was just talking to on the phone told me that the press secretary or someone from the White House got, diagnosed with coronavirus. And I was just like, oh, well, anybody can get it, and kind of like walked off. And I didn't really acknowledge what he was telling me. So later I was like, that wasn't the best response. I responded in that way because I don't want to hear negativity about the news. And I thought what he was telling me was going to be negative. And so my negative response to him prompted a feeling inside of him. So later we were making dinner together and I said, hey, thank you so much for sharing that with me. That was kind of like a little interesting thing that I would want to know about. And so I appreciate that. I just want to let you know I responded in that way because I'm not really interested in hearing about negativity around the news because it kind of drains my energy. But I want to thank you for sharing that with me. And so we had a really good conversation around that because I acknowledged that. Because I acknowledged that I held expectations, I immediately judged him. I immediately went into a response. And that sounds like something small, but you can apply that to larger things that happen as well as far as resentment goes. Let's see. What was the next thing you asked me about? Getting motivated?
Yep, getting motivated.
Okay. So getting motivated, I think, is really personal. But the number one thing that I've done during this time in order to stay motivated, and this is going to sound kind of strange, is I don't really consume a lot of anything. So I am not on social media every day because everyone is on social media more. And I'm not on there to consume and look at what other people are doing. I'm not on there to look at what other women are doing in their business because sometimes what happens is like I start comparing myself to them. I should be doing this. I should be further along. I should be doing this. And even though maybe I have like an initiative or a project or something that I'm working on, that makes me stop in my tracks because I start feeling like I'm not doing enough, like I'm not good enough. So stepping back on the consumption. And here's what I like to say on that. I know a lot of people will say, well, you need to unfollow all of these people if you're getting those feelings. But is that realistic? Is it realistic to say that you're never going to have a stimulus like that actually like makes you feel some way? You want to learn to be able to deal with it. So you want to learn to be able to deal with it. So to counteract that, I like to add more positivity into my newsfeed. So what do I want to see? So going back to that dreaming, so I started adding like on my Instagram, some pages that were around like Oceanside, California and Tulum, Mexico, or a couple places that we're interested in.
Oh, yeah.
So if I hop onto my feed by chance, and I am going to do some scrolling, which like I said, I've been limiting that because it was slowing my motivation. And that's a tip people can take away. But then I'll start seeing some part of my dream coming in to my Instagram feed. And so it's not that I won't see those amazing boss babes that sometimes I compare myself to or anything like that too. but I'll start being, and that lifts me up. The other thing I think around motivation is to get back to your why. You know,
Yeah.
what is your why for doing this? And if your why has any words around it, like I need to, I should, or I'm expected to, oh girl, you got to revisit that,
Mm,
because those are expectations based on somebody else. And if you're always living your life based on someone else's expectations, then you're going to be living their life. You got to figure out like what your why is and why you're really doing it. And I like to say, like, dig deep into that, you know, because oftentimes we'll say like my why is because I want to help other people. And it's like, okay, well, tell me more. What else is true? You
mm-hmm.
know, what else is true? Like for me, my why is because I know the women that I help, I know how they feel because I used to feel that way. And I so deeply want to show them that there's a different way to live and a different way to be and a different way to show up. And I always like to say, like, to become obsessed with your own life, like that is my why, because I know and I feel so deeply that they can feel how I feel. And I want to guide them to do that, you know? So it's not just like I want to help them, but it's like I now have this feeling inside of my body that that's my why. And so if I get off track, I'm going back to that. You know, how did I feel when I was like them, when I was in that situation? What was happening and how did I move myself to change? The last tip on motivation, and I think this is one that oftentimes, I'm not sure if your audience is mainly men or women, but this can apply to anybody. Oftentimes, people that are busy, ambitious go-getters, if we're having a challenge or if we're feeling stuck or unmotivated, we do not speak it out loud. We
Yep.
don't share from a vulnerable place. And the reason we don't is because we're fear of judgment of other people. But here's the thing, I want to bust that down right now. If you share, then it is like the most magical thing of this human experience is sharing from a vulnerable place, because that connects people more than ever before. And so if you share, you know what you're going to hear? Oh my gosh, I've been feeling the same way too.
Yes.
This is what I did. And it just like immediately breaks down the walls, and it just makes you feel so much better by speaking it out loud. And that goes for anything. That goes for your challenges, that goes for your dreams. Like if you keep everything inside, no one's going to be able to help you and pick you up. You know, like I said about like Oceanside or Tulum, someone might listen to this and send me a DM and be like, hey, my cousin lives in Tulum, let me hook you up. But if I never spoke that out loud, then I'd never have that connection, you know?
Exactly. Ugh. I'm getting slightly teary-eyed because I legitimately inside felt when you were talking about your passion, I felt that excitement and I'm like, oh, I know, I get it. I understand. And I think one of the really cool things about you is even when I first saw you speak, there is a radiance about you that even now I can hear it in how passionate you are about these things. And I'm just so proud of you for everything that you're doing. And I believe as women, we need to tell each other that more. So I'm always about, girl, you're fabulous. The end.
Mm-hmm. Well, I received that, and I think you're fabulous as well. And I actually do not know how you do as what you do. Like, you help people, you have a podcast, you have a full-time amazing like career, and you're always learning. And congratulations, by the way, on
Oh,
all your
thank
recent like
you.
nutrition certifications and everything. That was so cool to see.
Yes, and it's funny. I wanted to tell you that too. Like it was so funny because as I was studying, I'm like, I remember the one of the first conversations we had, and you're like, okay, do this and this and this, and I'm like, yep. Like even on those times where I was like, oh, this is so hard. I remember what you told me about just focus on this one thing at a time. You know, you can
Mm-hmm.
still reach out to people, you can still help people, and that's one of the things that really kept me motivated. So thank you. Um,
Oh, that's so wonderful.
yeah, like I also think that during this time it's given me the opportunity to express to people how much I care about them, how much I want to see them win and be successful in all those things. So this was another opportunity for me to do that. So yay. Awesome.
Wonderful. Thank you for sharing that. I do agree with that more. I think not only do we need to tell other women that they are doing a good job and push them up, um, I think there's a mindset like if you share or you say something, like people have not embraced like the community over competition, but we all need those strong, empowering women in our lives, not only that will support us and inspire us to be better, to do more, but also challenge us and call us out on our BS, like when we're like, slacking off or not holding, not doing the commitments that we want to do with ourselves, our lives, our business, or our goals. And then the other part of that too is us as individuals, like being proud of our wins and celebrating our wins. So oftentimes something I do with my clients that I mentor or in my group mentoring programs is have them before bed write down a couple things that they're proud of for themselves. Because
Mm-hmm.
again, as busy, ambitious women, we oftentimes just go from one goal to the next, and we're not celebrating those wins. And we really need to be celebrating because that is where we're collecting the evidence to build the confidence and the belief that we can do the next big thing.
Yes. Ugh, so good. And definitely along that line, like I know that you do coaching and you work with women and you have all of these amazing things. So, how can we get connected with Carmen and all of the amazing things that she has to offer? Tell
Well,
us.
thank you for asking. Yes. I think the best way is just to connect with me on social media. So at Carmen Ohling, Ohling, and Instagram and Facebook both. I'm really active on Instagram. I will personally message you back if you make a comment on one of my posts. But I'm all about just serving up real. So sometimes I'll share things like I would always for the few Sundays at the beginning of the self quarantine and social distancing, I did share your shit Sunday because I had a lot of feelings coming up and I would just list that out. I would say, like, I am feeling this way and this happened and I cried and I did this because everyone else was feeling the same way too. And I wanted people to know and come together that if we can talk about it as a collective, we can lift each other up. So I share things like that from a real perspective, but I also share really quick tips, tools, strategies, resources, and inspiration, recipes, just things to support your highest self. Because like I said, like focusing on feeling good is what we should be doing every day. And so that's what you can find from me. And so following me on social media, having a conversation, like get in my DMs, watch my stories. One of the biggest things, the two biggest compliments I can get is, oh my gosh, girl, you practice what you preach. So if you watch my stories, you'll see that. You'll see my daily walks and my meals and my journaling and all of that. And the second thing is like, are you in my head? Like women tell me that all the time. Like, yes, yes, I am. We're all there. And I used to be there. And hey, sometimes I'm still there. But this is what we can do to take action to move from inaction, like what we were talking about, like feeling stuck and feeling unmotivated, to taking action on something in our life.
Mm, mm, mm. I love it. So there you have it. I will make sure that all of this is in the show notes for this particular episode. And this was so good, Carmen. Thank you so much for all of this, for taking the time to talk to me and share your amazingness with my audience. So thank you again.
Oh, thank you so much for having me. And I want to recognize you and just how much you do to show up to serve as well, because you have such an amazing heart and you have that energy and that light and that radiance as well. And I just love it. So thank you so much.
Thank you. Okay, thyroid warriors, get out there and take things one step at a time. Remember, be great, reflect on your triumphs, and as always, be well. Take care.